Nintendo Revisionist History, Episode 1, The Wonderful 101. In the E3 reveal of the Nintendo Wii U, an obscure game was shown with a large group of fighters moving around in a group with an isometric view. The game at the time was tentatively titled Project P100. On top of an on-floor demo, some details trickled out, most notably that it was being developed by Platinum Games exclusively for the Wii U. It floated under the radar, with Nintendo's IP and other major third parties taking most of the media's attention. It would be months before Nintendo showed the game again, adding to the mystery of the title. What else was odd was that it was officially given a launch window release date, but missed that by around 6 months without any word on a delay. The title of course went on to become The Wonderful 101, an action game that was doing some pretty outrageous things, to be quite honest. Morphing heroes into weapons, capturing enemies, fighting incredible boss fights. The game could only be described as over the top. What some fans perhaps don't know is there was some genuine excitement surrounding this game, especially from fans of action games. Platinum Games and their co-founder Hideki Kamiya excelled in the genre, with Bayonetta being Platinum Games' biggest hit. P was no stranger to Nintendo platforms though, having also developed Mad World for Wii, an M-rated romp through a comic strip world. Kamiya also found fame for his work in directing Okami, Beautiful Joe, and Devil May Cry while working at Capcom. The Wonderful 101 had a vibrant, almost kiddie aesthetic, but with Kamiya directing, some fans understood something special could be happening behind closed doors. The gameplay looked fun, polished, and many of the cutscenes were just so over the top that it made the game feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. Following the Wonderfuls around looked awesome, and the banter and interaction between characters is a shining point for the game. The point is, there was reason for fans of Kamiya and action games in general to feel good about the Wonderful 101. It was an interesting time in the Wii U's lifespan as well. After a successful launch, global hardware sales had plummeted. By the summer of 2013, 10 or so months after the launch of the console, the Wii U was desperately in need of a killer app, as the writing was beginning to appear on the wall. An obscure action game probably wasn't something to hang your hat on, but a lot of pressure was suddenly pressed on the Wonderful 101 to score well critically. Looking back, it was unfair to place such tremendous pressure on such a niche game, but such was the state of Wii U in late summer of 2013. Remember, fans were starved for content in the summer and early fall. The last major release was Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate back in March. Rayman Legends was stripped of exclusivity in the same month. It's not an exaggeration to say that the Wii U was already in extreme trouble with no killer app and no major release in 6 months' time. And fans were anxious. Pikmin 3 was also being released around the same time, but the Wonderful 101 was now being counted on to help support this long drought. The game had to have mass appeal and it had to review well. When reviews began to roll in for the Wonderful 101, they were mixed, as most could probably have predicted. There were 90s, there were 60s, and there were lots and lots in between. One infamous review on IGN.com caused quite the contention, and I happened to be part of the meltdown that ensued on the Nintendo Lobby Forum on the same website. The backlash of these average reviews was that people on the fence about the game ignored it, and people who were excited for the game were left defending it, often falling on deaf ears. A killer app this was not. As I mentioned previously, this game had a lot of pressure to perform well, and as reviews came in, it was clear that it did not live up to those very lofty expectations. In all my years following games, I've never seen such a unique situation for such an obscure game. I personally love the game. It's in my top 10 of all time, and that isn't an exaggeration. But when playing it, it is quite clear right away that the game isn't going to be for everyone. It isn't Mario, it isn't Zelda, it isn't Halo or Gears of War, it isn't Uncharted or Tomb Raider. It is a superhero game, very Japanese. It is quirky and fun and a little difficult. The controls are wonky and sometimes unresponsive. There are weird indoor areas that are difficult to navigate and must be played on the gamepad. There are secrets to find and unlock, but you'd have to have a sixth sense to find them all. The game is flawed, and still it is fun as hell. As you might expect though, regretfully, the Wonderful 101 bombed in terms of sales numbers. It currently sits at 77 Metacritic score, which is very respectable considering all things. But despite the only above average scores, the game will always have a place in Nintendo's history. I often wonder, what if? What if the game had lived up to lofty expectations? What if it had found mass appeal? A game that couldn't come soon enough but never quite arrived. A game that had a burden to bear that wasn't its own and wasn't fair to ask. A game that quite simply could have saved the Wii U. In an alternate reality, if the Wonderful 101 had lived up to unrealistic review expectations, maybe it would have helped the Wii U. Maybe it would have prolonged its life. Maybe there is no Nintendo Switch.